Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dominique from the Clayton County Library System. And today we're going to be introducing our seed library series in coordination with our seed library that will be starting in February. Today we have the Clayton County Master Gardeners helping us with this program. So I'm going to go ahead and let her get started. All right, give me just a second.
Good morning and welcome to Clayton County and the library and to the Master Gardeners presentation today for how to start a vegetable garden here in Georgia. This is how to make your plan. My job here today is to give you an overall view of what you need to make your plan. I can't make your plan for you because every yard and every situation is different. But I can give you the keys that you need to develop something that will be a success for you. And the first thing I would like to tell you about is you're going to need information beside what I will give you today. I am going to cite a lot of references, and you will see some on the slides. But the way you can find that information is if you go to extension.uga.edu/publications. And when you put that in, it will bring you to the website, and you will see at the top there is an address with a UGA logo, and on the left-hand side, below the heading Publications, that's where you will type your entries. Otherwise, you'll be in the UGA search block, so just make a note of that. All right, the first thing is the key elements to consider. Number one is site. You have to go and find a place to have a garden. So when you do this, you need to keep in mind sunlight. You're going to need 8 to 10 hours of sun a day. That is preferable. But that is, you can do it with a little bit less, but that is the optimal success range to really be in. Okay, also when you're walking around on your site, pay attention. Do you have slope on the land? If you've lived there long, you will know because of the way the water runs off, but pay attention because that will drain your garden faster. So you need to also know if your soil has been amended, or if you've gone out there and tried to dig like we did in our yard, and my husband took a pickaxe and finally gave up because it was so compacted. So that's good Georgia clay, y'all, that hasn't been worked in a long time. So we can handle all that. You can add amendments to the soil, but the first thing is you have to go out there and know what you're dealing with. Okay, so you need a water source also, and you need to know about shade. Let me not forget that. Pay attention to where the trees are outside, where your neighbor's trees are. In the winter, when you're going to be going out there right now, the sun is lower. Therefore, the shade patterns you will see in your yard are not going to be the same shade patterns that you're going to get in the summertime, because then the sun is going to be right overhead. But if you have at least 50 to 60% of an area right now that has good sun, you should be fine for the summer planting. So now the next thing you're going to need is you need a water source. So if you can have a hose, that would be ideal. And then the other thing is to do rain catchment. But you need to have a water source. And then it's very much a plus to keep it close to your home. Because if you've got to go and tend it, and you will, and to harvest it, you don't want to walk all the way back if you've got a big backyard like I do, and go all the way back there and come back, because you'll always need to go and then something will happen. So if you can keep it close to the house where you can harvest easily, bring it back in, cook with it, you're going to enjoy your garden. You're going to have, even if you have a successful garden, if you don't enjoy the harvest, you haven't really hit the ball out of the park yet. All right, so now going back to the soil, I said we can help you, and that's where your extension office comes in. You can go in and you can ask for a soil sample bag. As a matter of fact, if you go into the local office, there is one sitting just in the foyer. They are prepared for you all coming in. And so they know you want to get the soil sample bag. There will be this little brochure that tells you exactly how to go about taking a soil test. It's got examples in it. And you know, you see this now, they're going to be taking them from different areas. Here, every area that is a little bit different color, they're probably going to be taking different samples and getting it because it's going to represent a different area of a very large yard. But in a small backyard, you're only going to have to fill it up to this line. So you don't need massive samples. You don't need garbage bag fulls of dirt. So just go in, get your bag and get your information, and you will be able to then bring that back. And when you bring that back, this is kind of like a two-step process. When you get there, if you would pick this up and fill this out, and over here where it says crop codes, they want you to just write in there the idea of what kind of crops you're wishing to grow in that area. And if you're going to do it organically, do note that on there, because there is a different test information that will come back to you that will tell you how to use organic. So that is basically how we're going to help you in the extension office and at soil samples. So bring those back. It is $10 to have one run. All right, now we're on the side where you're going to have to start getting out a pencil and a piece of paper. I am an ex-teacher, so I've got my notes here, and I'll be talking about homework. Yes, I will. Okay, so what you need to do is you need to decide the type of garden you want. Do you want an in-ground garden? Do you want container gardens? Or do you want a raised bed garden? Now, I started my journey into master gardening and gardening by joining the community garden of Morrow, and we have raised beds. And I can tell you, my husband, when I told him I was going to try to grow crops one more time, he said, if you don't succeed this year, I'm not funding you because we can buy the produce a lot cheaper. So I was like, okay, well, for me, the magic garden has been the raised bed garden. I really enjoy it. You don't have to have ours are too big because we're older and our backs are a lot more achy than y'all's younger people. But if you just raise the ground at least 12 inches in the yard, you can have a raised bed without the expense of all of the materials. But it is for me just been wonderful. The ground will warm up faster if you have a raised bed area, and also it drains better when we have those long rainy times here in Georgia. So it just works out, and you can reach in and get it better also to harvest. But that is up to you. But whatever you do, when you're planning you need to plan for how you're going to do your maintenance in the garden. If you're going to have rows and you're going to have walking paths between your rows, because you don't want to walk on the rows. You want to keep that area from compaction. You want that soil. What you want the soil to be is you want it to be loose. You want it to have air in it. You want it to drain. You want it to have the key elements that a plant needs. And it has to put its roots down. So if you have a nice broken up loose soil, the roots can go down and they can get the nutrients and they can produce easier for you. And that leads you to a lot less damage from insects, because insects come to plants that aren't growing and aren't as healthy first before they attack any other plant. So, but keep in mind that you're going to need to get either your wheelbarrow down in there, and if you've got grass, you'll need a mower. So keep that in mind. Figure your area out and then measure it out, and then get you a piece of paper and put things on that piece of paper that locate where it would be in your garden. So that's a good rule of thumb too, is not to start too big. And as you'll see here, a good rule of thumb is not to start too big. You want to not go to you want to think of it as not starting in the major leagues, but in the little leagues, and you want to build your skill. So you can start out with just 2 beds, 1 bed, and get the confidence you need. Because the smaller you have with success and build on it, the more likely you are to keep building on that success and to pursue this. And in today's world, I really feel like to get a good, clean harvest benefits your health and benefits everything else you need. Exercise, you're out in the elements, you're doing something productive. It just is across the board as what the benefits are to you personally and to your family. All right, now the next thing we have to do is we have to select a crop variety. And if you will, look, I have referenced a seed starting chart, which is C963. And this is called the vegetable planting chart. This one is wonderful because it tells you about the cultivars. On here, it's going to have your vegetables. It has your days to maturity. And then it tells you the different names of all the kinds of cultivars that are meant for this area. So if you're in Georgia, you should be able to see when you go, because the big box stores do not necessarily carry just what's good here. They just carry what they get sent. Some of it will be better aligned for our area. And then some of the crops will be for maybe a little bit more advanced gardener. Some of the heirloom crops are a little bit harder to grow. So keep in mind that this is a good example of what you can expect to have good success with. It will tell you your planting dates for the spring planting and the fall. It will come over here and tell you about, well, this is if you had a 100-foot row, but it has spacing. It says how many seeds you would need. And then if you're doing it in containers, that's altogether different. But the spacing for the rows, but more importantly, the depth that you need to plant this in. So asparagus here, you see 6 inches. That is not a seed. That is a start that you would buy and plant. So that is your planting chart. And then the next thing you need to keep in mind are 2 very important dates. The first one is going to be April 15th, and it's not because it's tax day, but because that is the last average day for frost here in this area. You cannot take a tomato, even if they have it in the big box stores, and put it outside. I wouldn't suggest it. You might get lucky once in a while, but if it gets any frost and peppers and things, there's just so many summer vegetables that if they get the least bit of cold snap to them, they might grow, but they won't produce well. They just won't. You'll think it's you, and it's not. It's actually the weather. You're going to find out that you're going to really be a part of nature. You'll pay attention to nature, and nature is going to affect you greatly. So that is why this is a very important chart. It tells you about the last date for frost, and then the first date for frost, which is November the 11th. That's Veterans Day. So we have Tax Day on one end and Veterans Day on the other. And we grow in a climate zone, our hardiness zone here that is 7B. So if you'll see in books sometimes it says to know your hardiness zone. So that's important also. That just tells you just what I just said. It's your first and last day of frost. Okay, now to do this, these are mostly important if you're starting seeds. And I would truly suggest that in your first year, do try to plant some seeds, but I would stick with transplants because the plant is ready and you have so much to learn once you get that plant in the ground about keeping that plant healthy. So it's a lot easier to start with transplants the first year. But the information you would need for the last average frost date to start seedlings is you've got to do math, and you have to back the time up, and you have to see, all right, that's going to be my first frost date. My last frost date. So now I have to come back and I have to say, how many days is it going to take for a plant to get to maturity? And then it takes a plant so long to germinate. And when we get to the seed packet, I'll explain that a little bit more. And you have to do it in reverse on the other end to say, okay, that is going to be my first day of frost. So now I have to start counting forward, and I have to start adding and see if I have enough days to get my plants to harvest level before that first day of frost. So frost will kill your plants. It does not kill going into the winter, the ones that are called hardy. So hardy plants, like you'll see collards and broccoli and a lot of the leafy greens. I mean, my salad was fine the other day till we got that really cold snap, and it had went through some frost, but now my lettuce is gone in my garden. So we will be doing that, and like I said, you have some homework and we'll have some math. All right, now, when using seeds in mind, keep in mind when using seeds for planting, keep in mind the information on the seed packet. And if you can see right here, there is a lot of information on a seed packet. It's going to tell you to sow seeds indoor, and it will give you a range to start with. Now that is if that's in your zone. So this is where your math comes in. But the key idea is it still says key days to germination. It takes 10 to 21 days to germinate an eggplant seed. Okay, you come over here and then it is, let me see, get mine here. I'm trying to get it sideways. Okay, if you're going to transplant these outdoor, and it needs full sun. So it's going to tell you what area you need to put it in. Some plants will take, they will call it partial shade, but this one is going to take full sun. Then it's going to tell you about how big the plant is going to be. So at mature height, it's going to be 2 to 2.5 feet tall. And then how many days before you're going to be able to harvest from that? That is 80 days. And sometimes people are a little surprised at how long it takes for some plants to mature. And that is why it's good to have a garden. And it takes a long time to get your plants to harvest. And we will have to work on getting them there and keeping them healthy during that time. And so to keep them healthy, the next thing you need to know about is fertilizers. Now, if you will, we have a seed chart, and it's circular 963. And it's right here in the slide. So here we go. We have heavy, medium, and light. These plants here are going to take more fertilizer. These are going to take less. And this one, good old Southern peas, doesn't need a lot at all. And the key elements that we're talking about when we're talking about fertilization is nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and then you get the secondary, which are your calcium, magnesium, sulfur. And then these are in, nitrogen is in PKs. You will see that sometimes on the bags. And the way that they are, numbered on the bags is if you see something like 10, 10, 10, you've heard a lot about 10, 10, 10. That means that you have equal amounts of all of those, and that is called a balanced fertilizer. So you have equal amounts of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And then there is, got the next slide? Okay. As far as an incomplete fertilizer, you might see one. Now, this is a soil test is the best way, of course, to find out about your nutrient status. And when we're talking about the most commonly reported elements are in nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Okay, the nitrogen isn't going to come back on your soil test, so you won't know about nitrogen. Nitrogen comes from the air and in the rain, and when it rains, it brings the nitrogen down, and as the rain goes through the soil, it also washes the nitrogen away from the plants. So that will not be on a typical soil report test. But when you're dealing with fertilizers, you have to keep in mind a complete fertilizer is going to have an element in all three of these categories. So you'll have three numbers on the bag representing those three key elements, which are nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus and potassium. I always get those two confused a bit, sorry. All right, so if you had like 16, 4, and 8, you have the most in the nitrogen category, then you're going to have the middle is the less is going to be in the phosphorus category, and then the next highest will be in the potassium category. And then you could see something like a 15, 0, 15. You're going to only have nitrogen, no phosphorus in that one, and potassium. And as you learn more about gardening, you'll find out that there are certain times that you need those elements in those ratios. So as a gardener, you are going to have to spend some time and learn a little bit. But to start with, you want a balanced fertilizer. If you stick with a 10, 10, 10, that gives you all of the key nutrients that you're going to need, and that will help your garden flourish. So just if you're a beginning gardener, keep in mind 10, 10, 10. A lot of gardeners just stick to that almost always. So that's a good fertilizer to start. Now we're going to talk about planting. Besides knowing the first and last frost date, you're going to have to know something about soil temperatures. And if you go to the website georgiaweather.net and you choose the Jonesboro station, because it's going to ask you what station you want. And we are in the Jonesboro area, so that's our station. And if you will go to that, it's going to give you information about soil temperatures. Soil temperatures are very important because if you have too warm of soil or too cold of soil, it's going to interfere or speed up the germination rate for your seedlings. So an example is at a soil temperature of 32 degrees, it will take spinach 62 days to germinate. But at 68 degrees, it will only take those seeds 6 days to germinate. And when I went yesterday, I looked up the soil temperature for the area here. At 2 inches, we had 49.9. At 4 inches, we had 45.5. And at 8 inches, we had 43.3. So keeping in mind that that's not too far away from, it's probably a little bit closer to 32 or maybe right there in the middle. So if you planted a spinach seed today, it would probably take it about 30-something days to germinate, because we're kind of right there in that mid-range. But do you really want to have to nurse a plant? I mean, keep watering the seed and make sure it keeps moist, because that is something you will have to do. You will have to keep your seedlings moist. Now, seed starting is a whole other category, and you will have to read some more about that. But just know that the temperature very much affects of the soil, how you're going to be able to start your seedlings. I put mine, I sowed a whole garden in the summer in August for my fall crops, and about 4 years ago, and the temperatures were really raging, but it said that was a good time to start it. And I did it, and I learned not a single seed I put in the ground 21 days later was showing any signs of life. So I just had to scrap that. I started again. But because by then the temperatures of the air outside and just the local temperature had gone down, I was able to plant again, plus I did buy some transplants, and I was able to get a harvest that year. But my epic fail was when I really did not know, and you won't always know everything there is, but if you can understand soil temperature is very important. I learned the hard way. I hope this helps you not to have to learn the hard way. Now, another thing to keep in mind is it tells you about the height. Remember that eggplant is going to get 2.5 feet tall. Well, the spinach is only going to get about 6 or 8 inches tall. So the next thing to keep in mind is when you're planting, you'll need to know the northeast-south directions of your garden and keep all of your tall plants like tomatoes on the north side. Anything that's going to be above 2 feet tall, you would want to keep that on the north side of the garden. And the reason for that is because if you don't, you put it on the south side, it's going to shadow out anything that is going to be on the north side of that. So keeping that in mind. And you'll also need to know about one other thing when you come to planting is the depth. When it comes to putting out transplants, we basically want to get them at the level that they were at in the container, or as deep as they are. The one exception is that with tomatoes. Tomatoes, when you see them, you'll see like they have like a little hairy stem. Well, every one of those little hairy fibers can become roots. So you want to bury that on half of the whole plant's depth or 3/4 even. And as it starts to grow a little bit, pluck those little leaves that are going to be touching the ground off, because of the, you don't want the bacteria and the fungus in the soil to come up and splash on the tomatoes. But you can plant a tomato very deep, and the deeper you do, the better the root system. So that is just when you're planting, that was a key idea. Keep in mind to follow the seed starting packets for what you need to plant seeds, and for other items, keep in mind the the next idea that we need to address here is your mulch. Now, you can cover beds with straw, leaves, compost, or pine straw to a depth of 2 to 4 inches, as this will conserve moisture, control weeds, and reduce it will control weeds and just reduce your cultivation. The next element involved here is watering. And you want to water early in the morning from the bottom and not the top of the plant. A soaker hose is a good idea to have in the garden even. I know I had those in my raised beds, so when I would go out there, I would turn my soaker hose on, and while I was harvesting, I was actually watering. So that killed 2 birds with 1 stone. But when you're watering, you want the ground to receive the water, not, I know we think it rains and it rains down, so we're going to water the plants down. But because of the high disease that we have here in the South, if the sun doesn't burn the water off fast enough, if it got real cloudy, clouds came in, it can set you up for disease factors. So if you can keep your leaves dry and water at the roots, then that's the way you want to water. And you also don't want to water like every day. Some people go, oh, well, I got to go water today. No, if you water every single day, the root system that develops will stay right there at the top area of the soil. It won't go down and seek the nutrients and the water that is in the soil below. So you don't have to water it. The way to test is put your finger down in your bed. And if you draw it out and it's sticking to your finger, it's moist. If you draw it out and there's absolutely nothing on there, that's time to water. You can also tell a plant, if a plant's leaves are starting to wilt and fall over, then do need water. And so if you will water your beds to an inch of about 6 inches down, so really push down. I mean, don't just go an inch, but push that finger on down and see how wet you are down at the root zone. Because that top layer is not where you want your root zone to stay. And if you shallow water, that's exactly what is going to happen. And there is if you see a circular 964 on conserving water, that will help you also with some overall key ideas in that. And then controlling disease. All right, we have a circular 6862 disease management in a home vegetable garden. This will tell you about how the bacteria and the fungus that are common here play a big role in your overall garden. Once you get if you also water and your leaves are touching the ground, then the fungus that's in the ground will come up, and if you get leaves touching, you want them to not, on tomato plants especially, you want to keep your leaves off the ground. As it grows up, pinch those bottom leaves off, because we have high fungal soil, and if you let the dirt splash up when you're watering it with hard hoses, then you would have a higher rate of fungal diseases. And when we've gotten through all of this, we come to harvesting, and there is a wonderful plan to harvest vegetables, and this is C935, and this has a wonderful chart, because I mean, we go to the grocery store, we get things that have been picked, and they know when to pick them. When do we know to pick them? So this will give you a good idea about the vegetable type, and it tells you the part that's eaten. I think we mostly know that, but anyway, they put that on there for you. And you can, then you come over here, and if it's too early, it will tell you that, like on beans, all right, you eat the seed pods, so for lima beans. So you don't want the bean size to be really small. So if you fill that bean pod and you can hardly feel a seed in it, you know you don't want to choose that. So the optimal maturity length is going to be, it's going to be a bright green. It's going to have a puffy and large seeds in it. So that could be kind of they can vary a little bit, but if it has those characteristics, bright green puffy pod with large seeds, then you know you want to harvest that. And when is it too late? When they're big and they start turning yellow, then you pass the optimal maturity date. And when you do that, things start going to what is called bloom and seeding. And once they start producing their own seeds, then they lose their flavor, the flavor of the plants change, and it's just not going to be a good thing to harvest. But if you leave them and let them go to seed, it will be a pollinator attraction for insects, and good insects. So that is a handy little tool to have right there. And then we have in the vegetable garden calendar, this gives you an idea of how to manage your overall year. Because we are very fortunate here, because we can start a fall garden over in like September, and it can go, I still have collards in mine. My lettuce is gone. My onions and my garlic are up, and I can harvest the garlic in the summer, but my onions, I can cut off the tops right now and use them as green onions. But if we can harvest a long time here in Georgia, we aren't just down to like a 3 or 4 months. It's only like January and February is about the only time we're not really harvesting. So if you see here, there are things to do every single month. And this gives you an overall good picture of what you might need to do if you're a brand new gardener. And then the last thing, and the last element that we will discuss here is learning. If you're going to be a gardener, you really need to be a lifelong learner. Your best friend for a successful harvest, it will be found in good information and developing the spirit of becoming a lifelong learner. Each year will present you with new challenges that provide for new successes. And then some sources for information are at your local library. There are excellent YouTube gardening channels on. And then you have your state and county extension service. And may I recommend that not just the services here, but if you hear things the way different people say them and are written differently, if you go to Alabama and you put in their extension services and you link it to the same zones that we are, hardiness zones, you're going to get a paper that would be on the same thing you would hear in Georgia, but it might be stated just a little bit better. and sometimes the charts are a little bit different. And it's just nice to have all of these all over the United States. We have these extension agencies, and why not go and see how they're seeing it, how they're saying it? It's going to be the same basic information. It just allows you, as the type of learner, like I said, I was a former teacher. Everybody learns a little bit different style. And so the person that writes these will write in a tone that will be their style. So you might learn from them in a different county. And you can also link up with the other counties. I said around here, I should have said states there. But you can also link up and see, like Henry County is available to you, and Fayette County. Those are right here, our neighboring counties, and they do have active programs. And if you go over and you join them, they can also put you on their email list, and they can send you their list of what their presentations are. So you can triple the amount of information that you have locally right here just by calling them and asking to be put on their email list. So if when you're going to the UGA publications, I did want to mention this, and it was a postscript for me, so I have it on here as that. If you search for home garden, when you go in there in the publications, if you put home garden in, you will come to a section that has 33 separate publications that will be all listed together. And in that, it will go over all the different, not only key elements, but it will talk about tomatoes, beans, cucumbers, squash. So that's like a one-stop shopping. And that extension, when you put it in, that extension website is extension UGA Home Gardener, or I should have put this on there. I'm sorry, y'all. This one's a really long one. So if you just go in and put extension UGA and Home Gardener, and that's extension / UGA / Home Garden, then you will come and you will get all 33 of those different elements. And that being said, you say, well, all of that's electronic. If you're not overly comfortable with electronics, please look at finding books. And we can find information also from ordering catalogs. And we will see this, like Johnny's Seed Company here. This one is more for professional growers, but you can also order. They have small amounts. But one of the amazing things about Johnny's Seed catalog, I honestly keep it as a reference. It will tell you, I'm trying to find everything, my fingers are sticking. It will tell you, like for broccoli, over here, it will show you the cultivar, the disease and pest, the harvest, the seed spacing. It tells you all kinds of information on that. And over here, when you're getting into like your links, now they have a germination guide here that talks about the seed optimal range of temperatures that you need. And that's very handy. Like I said, not only knowing it, when you go to that georgiaweather.net, then you'll see over here, right there. So if you want to plant lettuce, you will find out exactly the directions, the information listed here. And then it tells you that these are the codes that the different types of lettuce are bred to resist. And then over here, it gives you your optimal range for your germination for your seeds once again. So Johnny's is a good, it is a good catalog to have, and it's a good reference source. Now, when I say we want to, when we start gardening, we aren't just limited to the taste that we have in the grocery stores. One of the best things is, and I was very surprised that there are 25,000 different types of tomatoes. But when you get totally tomatoes and you see page after page after page, well, they also sell some of different types of tomatoes, you realize the world isn't limited to what we have in the grocery stores. And that is the amazing thing about being a gardener, because you do explore a whole new taste range that you will never taste unless you grow it yourself. You really will not. And then like this one is an Asian vegetable seed, and they have things in here. I have no idea exactly what they are, but I started ordering some, and I found out that I love their jade green beans better than anybody else's. So, I mean, explore the variety in the world around us out there. And then we have the library also has some, thank you. We've got some of the examples here about the different things when you go online. That's exactly what they will look like for the information that I've been giving you. And then Clayton County has some books here in the library. I can tell you, Rodale, especially if you're an organic gardener, is a wonderful source. Anything they do, anything online, they're going to have good basic information. So that basically is the overall thing that you will need to keep in mind when you are starting your garden plan. So you have to have your site. It has to have good sun. You have to have water. And then all the other things are what would meet your particular needs. The other ones are not going to deviate. You're going to have a good site. It's better to have it close to the house. You have to have a water source, and that site needs to have 8 to 10 hours of sun every day. And then you can explore a whole new world. And the YouTube channels, if you want to go one more, like this is a whole new style of gardening that is no-till. So you think about that. Can I garden and not have to dig up weeds? If you do it Charles Downing way, you can, and they are very successful. Hugh Richards, and both of these are from UK. This is United Kingdom gardeners. And this young man started out very young, and he is just a natural at gardening. He has good ideas. He shows you a lot of information. And when you watch him on the YouTube channel, he has hints, and his hints are very, very useful. Whether you're in the UK or whether you're here, he is just a down-to-earth, very practical young man, and he really has a good way of explaining things. And then this one that is by, he's called The Rusted Gardener. And if you really want to know about organics and how to use homemades, and he uses scientifically based homemade remedies, then he's a good person to look into for that. And I will just conclude here with the fact that if you go online and put in publications for sale, they have the UGA offers these wonderful little pamphlets. I think this was like $4 or $5. Just found it. I just ordered it. I am a member of the Community Garden of Morrow, and we're going to keep one of these in our library section, because if you're having troubles, this is when it's laminated, so this is something we can take out in the garden and say, okay, where is our problems, and start trying to learn how to solve our problems. This one shows you don't kill all of your insects. So when it comes to pest management, if you see just a little bit, pick them off. If you see seeds on the back of leaves, scrape them off, get rid of them. But this also are the ones that you need to learn how to identify that are your beneficial insects. They kill your bad insects. They really are your helpers right here in the garden. And they are spiders, mites, and bees. There's all kinds of things in here that are amazing to find out. And then this is just an overall insect guide that helps you to know what are the main ones that we have here in the area. So if you all are interested in getting these from UGA, they are very handy. So are we about to the end? Okay. So I just want to thank everybody for being here, and I hope you come back. They have a whole program listed for you all. Like the next one coming up is soil preparation and fertilization. The next one is seed starting and germination. Then you're going to have information about pollinator and pollinator plants that help keep the pollinators in your garden. pest control. Then we're going to have harvesting, 5 main crops and seed saving, composting, cover crops and ground covers, fall gardening, bulbs for spring, and then preservation. So we have a whole, everybody here with the Clayton County Master Gardeners and Clayton County Library have a whole plan for you to walk you through this your first year. We want you to have a wonderful success. Just know one thing, you've got to show up to win. So get out there, make your gardens, and what doesn't work out this year, you learn from, and you will be better at looking for it next year, and it won't catch you. So thank you very much. I appreciate you all joining us today. And now if we have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Do you have any questions? I've either done a good job or a bad job.
Thank you, Deb.
Thank you very much. All right.